And we are live with today's 220-1201 Core 1 A+ study group. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I don't even have my headset in. My laptop is not displaying anything, as you can see on the screen. Well, it shows it there, but it's not showing up there in that little box right there, which is a little bit of a problem. It's a little bit of an issue. Let's try it one more time. But we got a plan B, which is why I'm a little bit late. Hey, chat room. Hello, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. Let me see if I can plug this back in. I've been fighting with this for a couple of hours. Somewhere I have an adapter that will fix everything. Do I have it in front of me? I do not. I have no idea where it is. So I got to order another one of those. So we got like 2 minutes before we get this party started, and I'm just getting here. What's the worst that could happen, right? I'm sure it's fine. I got great questions for you, though, today. It'll be really good. And now I can see the chat. You can kind of see I've got a new prompter up here. You can sort of see the bottom of the prompter there. So I'm looking at the chat go by so that I can make this full screen here. There's a lot of complexities today as I flip around to different screens. We're going to see how well I can handle this and make this happen. Oh, and I don't have my drink. See, what in the world is going on here? I'm going to need to get that, though. All right. So stand by. I know we're going to be late starting because there's no way I'm getting back here in a minute, but I will be back. Do not worry. All right. Got lots. Look at that. 12 noon on the dot. Did we do it? This will be available on demand right after we are finished today. So thank you so much for your question. Okay. I think, let me adjust everything. Let me make sure microphone is on. These things are off. Are we recording? We are. See my Cylons going there. And all of my cameras are working, except that one. See that black box? That's going to be the bane of my existence today. So we'll keep stream health up. Stream is healthy. We're at the top of the hour. That I don't need to flip over because we'll work with it. Okay, let's now shift gears. I'm going to have to start my presentation in front of me like this. See how this works? See, you're already getting a little bit. We'll switch this around. Oh boy, this is going to be something, isn't it? Let's see what we're going to be able to do here and transition over to our study group right now. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2026 Professor Messer 220-1201. This is our Core 1 A+ study group. Thank you so much for joining us. We're coming to you live with questions and answers that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. We're going to see just how well you happen to know this content. I'm working through a few technical challenges today, but I think we'll be able to get through it. Just have some patience with me. We'll be fine as we step through all of this. I want to, of course, remind you that if you are here live, we would love for you to join us on this live stream by using the URLs that are right here on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That is the URL that will open up our question and answer panel. And if you are here live, you will be able to participate, vote, lock in your answers, and we'll see how well you actually do. This is all available from that link. All you have to do is pop open a new browser window, go to that link at professormesser.com/QA. You just stay there. It will take care of all of the rest for you. I will also remind you that if you are not here live, you obviously won't be able to use the Q&A. So you should join us live. Make sure you check our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. Also, to try it out, to see if it works, to see if the professormesser.com/QA link is working, you need to go to that link and be able to type this in. This is our question of the day, which is: a firewall is blocking all NTP traffic. Which of the following would be most affected by this security policy? And what you want to do is put in what you believe the answer happens to be. Now, that means that I have to come back over here and start the question so that you're able to see it. So you'll notice behind the scenes, it magically moves over to where it should be. And I'll remind you, of course, that as we are going through these questions, our standing rule in the chat room is please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link that is on your screen right now. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. That question again asked this. Should probably put myself at the right place on the screen so you can see it as well. A firewall is blocking all NTP traffic. Which of the following would be most affected by this security policy? Would it be database backups, automatic IP addressing, web server load balancing, network print services, and log file synchronization? If you think you know the answer, choose from the links that you have in front of you right there at professormesser.com/QA. You can lock in that answer. You'll know exactly when the answer is submitted. You'll see a screen that comes up, and then all you have to do is wait for me at that point, and you'll be ready to go. I'll also remind you, of course, that we have so much going on here along these things that we are doing. Of course, we have our YouTube channel with all of our training videos. It's available to watch anytime you'd like. There's no registration. None of our videos are hidden behind a paywall. You don't have to become or subscribe or pay a monthly fee. You simply go to youtube.com and look for Professor Messer, or use the link we have on our website, professormesser.com/YouTube. Of course, we also have daily A+ pop quiz questions that you could get in your email inbox, on X, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. They're all available for you to see. You simply type in professormesser.com/X, professormesser.com/Instagram, professormesser.com/LinkedIn. You'll find all of our daily A+ pop quiz questions there. It's a great place to go. You can find anything you're looking for. Of course, we have a lot of other things on our site as well. Sometime in this first hour, in fact, I'm going to give you a little bit of a little bit of information that will allow you to earn a continuing education unit credit, or a CEU. A CEU is a way to help renew your certification. So if you don't have your A+ certification yet, this won't apply to you. But listen in during this first hour, and I'll give you instructions on how you can receive a 1-hour webinar category CEU just for watching this video either live or watching it on demand. Today, we're going to be talking about the A+ exam, specifically the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. You might see these referred to as version 15. They were released on March the 25th of 2025, so just about a year old as we sit here in April of 2026. This means, if we do the math, that we believe this series of exams will retire on September of 2028. You won't expect any changes to the exam objectives until then. So if you are studying for the 220-1201 or 220-1202, check all of your study materials. Make sure those are the numbers that are listed. Those are the right ones to use for this particular exam version. The exam is 90 minutes in length. If you're taking the 1201, you need to earn a 675 on a scale between 100 and 900. And once you pass both the Core 1 and Core 2 exams, which are the 1201 and 1202 exams, your certification is good for 3 years. Also remind you that once you become familiar with our live streams, you'll notice that our YouTube video description is updated about a day after we're done. These timestamps that are added almost like magic to our timestamps on the YouTube video description, those are put there thanks to my marketing manager, Lori. So if you're someone who enjoys using these, make sure you give Lori a hello in the chat. Give her a thumbs up, give her a heart, let her know that she is able, just putting these in are able to help you find exactly what you're looking for and do it very, very quickly. something you can go back years on our replays to be able to see. So thanks very much, Lori, for doing that. Also remind you that once we're done here, myself and thousands of others of us are over on our Discord server. It's a great way to meet people who are also studying for their A+ certification. And a lot of people will open up an ad hoc study room. They will start testing each other on questions and answers. It's a great place to get a little bit more detail about this exam. Go to professormesser.com/discord. Also remind you, eventually you will need to take this exam. It's true. You'll have to pay a little bit of money to be able to have the ability to sit down and take this exam. In the case of A+, you got to take 2 different exams. If you happen to be in the US or Canada, here's an opportunity to take those exams for less cost. I have discounted vouchers on my site. These are exactly the same vouchers you get from the CompTIA website, but you're getting them at a discount. That's something that's available not only for those of you in US, Canada, or a US territory, but if you do purchase a voucher from our site, I even give you a little bit more. I've written an ebook called the CompTIA Exam Hacks ebook, and this ebook gives a lot of tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years that might help you with your CompTIA studies. So have a look at that. It's available at professormesser.com/vouchers, another way to help support what we're doing here on the website. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier, which was, a firewall is blocking all NTP traffic. Which of the following would be most affected by this security policy? Would it be database backups, automatic IP addressing, web server load balancing, network print services, or log file synchronization? We're going to stop our poll and see how we did with this. And you can see 58% of you say the answer is log file synchronization. We have 15%, a tie for second place between automatic IP addressing and network print services. 8% of you say web server load balancing, and then 3% say database backups. Well, if we were to look at the actual answer, it's the one that the majority of you chose, log file synchronization. Well, why would log file synchronization have anything to do with an exam? Well, one of the things you might want to be able to look at here is NTP servers. This is the ability to synchronize everyone's clock on the network is usually done through a protocol known as the Network Time Protocol, or NTP. There's probably an NTP server on your network or one that you might reference from a different network. There might also be an NTP client running inside of your operating system that you may not have even known is there, but it is checking in on that NTP server and updating the clock on your systems. That's why we never have to set the clock, because our operating system tends to do this for us. Well, that means that our answer here, log file synchronization, absolutely the right answer that we were looking for. So hopefully that gives you an idea of things that might help you as you are trying to plan your studies, especially those related to the CompTIA exam. Well, now let's talk a little more about, now that we've gone through a question we had in a previous study group. This was the only old question you're going to get today. We have all new questions for you directly from the CompTIA exam. And as many of you know, I like to start the first new question of the study group with a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are not multiple choice. They are not fill in the blank. They are anything but those. I guess fill in the blank often is one that is mentioned, but you don't commonly see it on the exam. CompTIA's definition of a performance-based question is one that is anything but multiple choice. We're very familiar with multiple choice. We just did a multiple choice question. So imagine what style of question could be anything but. Well, there's an unlimited number, of course, but it's commonly things like a matching question, a drag and drop question. Maybe they put you at a command prompt, although that doesn't necessarily fit for the Core 1 exam, certainly applies to the Core 2 exam. Maybe it's a drag and drop with a matching. Maybe they combine multiple aspects of that. Maybe there's an image and you have to drop things onto an image. There's lots of ways to ask questions. As I like to say, as long as you know the exam objectives, really doesn't matter how they ask the question, because you already know the answer. And I think today is one of those. I have a performance-based question for you today that is, I guess you could say that it's something that you should know, and it's certainly part of the exam objectives, but we're going to go through the process of really understanding it. So our performance-based question of the month is this question that asks, specify the colors for the T568A wired connector. I want to know for each of these pins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I want to know what those colors happen to be. So I guess in this case, I'm giving you an exam type that you would not commonly see on the exam, but it contains content that absolutely could be on the exam. Let me explain as you're answering this question by going to that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. I'll put it there twice so you're able to see it. This particular question is one that it's important to understand the differences between T568A and T568B. And knowing those differences can be pretty important. In fact, if you go out to your professormesser.com/QA, you can input those sort of in a fill-in-the-blank type form. But on the exam, you don't tend to get fill-in-the-blank. CompTIA does not tend to ask those. They could, and they might change it at any time. You might walk into the exam tomorrow and it's fill-in-the-blank. But traditionally, through the last many years, they have not really done fill-in-the-blank questions, thankfully. So in this case, I'm making it a little bit harder than what it really should be, which I think might help us with our studies. So go through the process of this one, the T568A wired connector, and be able to fill in what those different colors might be. Now, why is this important to know? I often have people tell me, why are we memorizing colors on an industry certification exam? That's because they're really T568A and T568B are really the only two ways that you should see Ethernet cables wired. We should all be using the same colors because it makes it so much easier to be able to troubleshoot. You know, if somebody in our organization, we might all use T568A or we might all use T568B. We'll make that decision, and then we can expect all of our jacks, all of our Ethernet connections, all of our patch cables, everything we use will have exactly the same color for pin 1, pin 2, pin 3, all the way through to pin 8. Makes it so much easier when you're troubleshooting, when everything is set up that way. If you think you know the answer, put in your answer at the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Okay, I mentioned in the pre-show, for those of you watching, that my laptop is not outputting any video. I've troubleshot this. I believe it's the adapter that I have here. So my $20 adapter has now got everything in a different form today. It's amazing how one single, very inexpensive little widget can cause problems in our big overall system. So as I stumble through this today, bear with me. I will find ways to make this work as we get through the details of this. Put in your answer at any time. I think we should step through what we think the answers are by going to a list of what these colors might be. Let's just display the colors. We want to know for a T568A connector what the different colors might be. And maybe we'll just reveal them on the screen here. This is a bit of rote memorization in a lot of ways, but this is also one of these times where you will find yourself going through the process of trying to memorize these. But after a while, once you start punching down or you start putting on connectors like an RJ45 connector, after you do the first 5 or 6 of them, it just becomes automatic. So if you've never done any type of connector, putting your own RJ45 connectors on a Cat6, Cat5 cable, any type of twisted pair cable, it's an interesting exercise. It is an exercise in frustration for the first hour or so. But once you start figuring it out, getting the wires to do what they need to do and putting on the connections and crimping them down and then plugging it in, and it works. It's like magic. Plus, it helps you remember what those colors happen to be. So in T568A, you can see that our colors are listed here. Colors 1 and 2 and colors 3 and 6 are specific to T568A. fact, the only difference between T568A and T568B is the green and the orange are swapped. That's the only difference. So for A, you just have to remember that that the green is the pins 1 and 2. And the way that these are shown, and you can see here, is that the green and white, that color and white, that striped color is pin 1, and then it alternates. Pins 1, 3, 5, and 7 are the striped pins, and pins 2, 4, 6, and 8 are the solid colors. We start with a green and white, and green are pins 1 and 2. Orange and white and orange are pins 3 and 6. So those are the ones that are switched between. This makes it easier to memorize, of course, because if you memorize that pin 4 is blue, pin 5 is white and blue, pin 7 is white and brown, and pin 8 is brown, those are the same between A and B. So that might be a quick way to figure that out. It's just another thing you can think about as you go down the process of memorizing these color standards, which are important, and then understanding the differences between T568A and T568B. Hopefully that's given you something to think about as you go through the process. I think as you work through everything that we are doing, I think one of the important parts of this are memorizing sort of the rote memorization part, but then also keeping in mind that there are things that are more of understanding in a broader sense. So we have some other questions for you coming up next that will help in a more broader sense. But that gives you an idea for our performance-based question of the month, T568A, and those colors are the important thing to remember. And if you'd like to create your own performance-based question from this, do the exact same thing with T568B. That's an entire section of the exam objectives that now you've memorized, and you can go on to the next thing. Let's do more questions, shall we? We have more questions waiting for you. Our next question is this one that asks, a digital signage display at an airport shows a faint ghost of the word departures, even when the screen content changes. Which of the following best describes this display characteristic? Is it distorted geometry, dead pixel, flickering, scaling, or burn-in? It's got to be one of these as we step through it. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link that is there on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. And lock in. A lot of people locking in their questions very quickly. You can see the numbers are cranking up there as we're going through these. So if you think you know what it is, pick the one that you think might be the best description of what we are seeing on this system. Understanding how to troubleshoot displays, troubleshoot anything dealing with video. It's an important part of this exam. And this question is certainly asking about one of those very important troubleshooting tasks and where you should go when you start running into problems like this. Let's see how, since a lot of people already got their answers in, I think it might be good to go through the process of understanding what those differences might be. So let's see how we did with this one. The question asks, a digital signage display at an airport shows a faint ghost of the word departures, even when the screen content changes. Which of the following best describes this display characteristic? Would this be distorted geometry, dead pixel, flickering, scaling, or burn-in? So let's close our poll and see how we did. We got big numbers. 80% of you say the answer is burn-in. Although double digits, 13% of you say the answer is a dead pixel. And then we have practically a three-way tie for third place. We have scaling, flickering, and distorted geometry between 2 and 3%. So let's think about troubleshooting displays and where we want to focus when we think about displays. Obviously, if you're looking at a display that is showing information on the screen, and that information is now staying on the screen even when it's not being actively put on the screen, we refer to that as burn-in. This is a problem that happens across all kinds of different monitor types. Doesn't have to be an older style CRT if you happen to run into one of those these days. But you'll certainly see this on LCD displays as well. I realize LCD display, ATM machine, you'll have to bear with me on that one. But notice that we have an example of this. This is straight from the question that I wrote, and this is an image from a display in an airport. And you can see at times, it looks like it used to show different things in different colors on the screen. In fact, you'll notice on the far right side where it normally would have the on-time display, you can even see some of the times that are burned into the screen. They're almost there permanently, so that anytime you put something else on the screen, you can still see the old image that's right there. This is, on LCDs, you may see this or hear this referred to as image sticking. Here's a better image of this burn-in so you can really see it. And in fact, you can see where the stuff was on time. It looks like they changed the format of their screen just a little bit. And now you can start to see some of those older pieces of information that are no longer being put on the screen, but now the screen's sort of stuck there. Not a great place to be if you're trying to troubleshoot problems. So if we were to look at the answers that you chose, you can see that we got a lot of folks that had that burn in. 80%, in fact, say the answer is burn in, and that's the one that you have chosen as well. That's the answer that we were looking for. That's absolutely correct. Now, why wouldn't it be some of these others? There are different options here, and in fact, 13% of you said a dead pixel. Dead pixels are a significant issue on LCD displays, certainly, and other types. We have all these little tiny pixels on the display, and if any of those pixels stops working, it effectively turns black. And when that happens, you'll see, especially if it's in the middle of the screen on a very light piece of information that you have showing, you'll very easily see that dead pixel there. It's not very easy to fix a dead pixel. Normally, you would just have to replace the display. And many display manufacturers have a standard of how many dead pixels is enough dead pixels to swap the display. They may not swap the display if there's only one or even two. Maybe they wait until there's 3 or 4. That's up to the display manufacturer. That's a question and a problem between you and them to determine whether that display should be replaced. Distorted geometry means that the one part of the screen is at a different geometry than the other part of the screen. Sometimes you'll see this on LCD displays or when we are in a display, broadcast the display on the wall, for example. That is an example of really seeing a different type of keystoning. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as that. That distorted geometry was not the problem we had in this particular question. We also didn't have the issue of the display itself flickering or going in and out, in and out, in and out. That's not a problem here. And scaling means that it's so tiny or it's very large. Maybe it's too big or too small on the screen. The scaling issues can make it difficult to read tiny text, for example. But in this case, we didn't have a problem reading the text. We had a problem with the text still being there after the screen content had changed. That is the definition of burn-in, and 80% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's go to our next multiple choice question on our list. I've got plenty here to go through. I think the next one is one that we can use to kind of get an idea of where to attack and work with some of the problems that we deal with relating to smartphone management. Smartphones, tablets, having mobile devices on the network is an enormous challenge. And so here's a question that helps with the management of those. This question asked, an employee wants to use their own personal smartphone to access work email and corporate documents. Which device ownership model refers to users bringing their own technology into the workplace? Would that be CYOD, SaaS, VDI, COPE, or BYOD? Kind of spelling everything out on the screen. Some of these things you normally would not spell out, but it's there. If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. If you think you know the answer, please don't put the answer in the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat room. Instead, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. See how well you do. A lot of people locking this one in quickly as well. Have you been doing a lot with smartphone management? I hope you have. This certainly helps in the first part of the exam. You'll be asked a lot about managing mobile devices, smartphone, tablets, and other similar devices. That's where you want to go to figure this one out as well. This is an enormous problem. Imagine having a set of technologies that never moved, and then all of a sudden the world changed, and suddenly our technologies were completely mobile, could move to different countries overnight. It's a bit of a challenge if you're trying to manage all of these, and that's the emphasis of this particular topic on the exam. The question again asked, let's see how you did with this one. The question again asked, an employee wants to use their own personal smartphone to access work email and corporate documents. Which device ownership model refers to users bringing their own technology into the workplace? Would it be CYOD, SAS, VDI, COPE, or BYOD? Let's stop our poll and see how we did. And you can see another huge number. This is much bigger than I was expecting from you. In fact, big numbers. 96% of you say the answer is BYOD. And then everything else obviously is single digits. We're out of points. SAS got 3%, COPE got 1% along with CYOD, and VDI, nobody chose VDI. Why is there no VDI in our list? Well, we didn't choose it. That's not what's there, but certainly it's something that is top of mind, it seems, for all of you. This might be something you might want to think about if you're trying to manage mobile devices and what the different options are. The one that we focused on was bringing our own device. Bring your own device into the workplace. And bring your own device, sometimes you'll hear this referred to as bringing your own technology, means that you are bringing your phone, but you're using it for business purposes. This is usually a nice win-win for the employer. You're able to keep one phone. That's your win. You can have that one phone, and then the employer doesn't have to buy new phones for everyone. We can simply use the one that's already there. One of the advantages of this is having the one phone, but one of the challenges is that now we have both corporate data and personal data on the same device. How do you keep those separate? How do you keep those private? How do you protect the corporate data while at the same time allowing the person to access their personal data? Fortunately, an MDM is set up in a way that you're able to make that happen. You're using a mobile device manager that will partition off different parts of the phone so that one part of the phone is dedicated for business, one part is dedicated for personal use. And then if you happen to leave the organization, they can delete the corporate data, but leave all of your data intact. So you don't run into any problems with your data going somewhere that it shouldn't be. Whenever you start working through and understanding the problems and challenges with mobile, you start getting a better understanding of how to resolve these issues and where you should focus on managing all of these issues. In this case, of course, you're bringing your own device into the network. It's exactly the answer that we were looking for. We have other answers here as well. We have choose your own device. CYOD was one of the answers that we provided. Choosing your own device means the employer is buying the devices, and they might have more than one model that you could choose from. So you're choosing which one you want to use. Normally, this would be part of a broader management of devices known as COPE. That is the corporate owned and personally enabled. This is one that similar scenario where the corporation, the organization is purchasing and owning those mobile devices, and then they are giving it to you and saying you're able to use this personal device. You're able to use it both for business and personal. So it's almost like they're buying the phone for you, but you're using it in exactly the same way that we were using the CYOD or the BYOD, the bring your own device into this. Choose your own device is one that you'll also see in that, but we tend to see COPE and BYOD the most. Really, we tend to see BYOD the most. The mobile device managers give you such flexibility in separating out the data. It's a very common way to deploy this, and a very easy way to manage all of that data all from your mobile device manager. Software as a service is not a personal smartphone management technique. Software as a service is a way to describe a cloud-based deployment technology, not specific to this question. And virtual desktop interface, VDI. The virtual desktop interface is one that normally you would see someone replacing these higher-end desktop systems and simply putting the desktop in the cloud. That is how we would manage a desktop in a cloud-based environment, but it does not allow us to manage a smartphone in the similar way. So in this case, the only answer that makes any sense, the one that the vast majority of you chose, was indeed BYOD. That is exactly what we were looking for. Well, as many of you know, if you've been watching my video courses, there are a lot of videos in my video course, and that's because there's a lot of content on the A+ exams. There's hundreds of objectives on the Core 1 exam and hundreds more objectives on the Core 2 exam. It is quite a challenge to be able to keep all of this information straight. So one of the things I will often tell people is maybe you should be taking all of that information and writing some notes. But there are 137 videos, over 19 hours of video content in my A+ exam series. So maybe this is not something that everybody can do. Do not worry. I already have course notes for you. And the course notes that I have for you have been set up to provide access to every important document, every important image, every important chart that I've created in this video course. I have created and put into my course notes. Let's have a look at the Core 1 course notes and give you a feel for what these are like. The Core 1 course notes are designed with the idea that you'll be able to have a PDF. This is the digital edition, and you can go read through the PDF. We're looking through it right now. So everything that is in my video 1.1 laptop hardware, here is all of the details from that video. Here's my video on connecting mobile devices. In fact, that one has some important interfaces that you need to know about. So those course notes are there. Of course, we have all of the important charts, all of the important graphics. Everything from these videos is in my course notes. These course notes are also available in a physical form. So obviously the same information you just saw, but it's in a printed book. We call this the physical edition. The physical edition of the course notes is one that we print on demand. Once you purchase it, we ship it out to you. Obviously, it is a high quality color type book to be able to provide everything that you would need from those course notes. And it's something that might help you if you're trying to work through your studies and trying to understand more about where can I summarize all of this. We're obviously not trying to replace watching the video series, but trying to give you a way that you could study a little bit more, try to understand the topics once you've gone through the videos, something that might help you. And if something you think you might be able to use, check out our course notes, our practice exams, and so much more over on our website. The link for this is professormesser.com/1201notes. Let's do some more questions, shall we? I think the next question on our list is one that should give you an idea of where to go next with understanding these challenging questions. Let's go to our next question on the list, which asks, an organization is auditing its legacy systems and discovers an older switch which only supports unencrypted remote management via a command prompt. Which TCP port is this switch likely using for these insecure administrative connections? Is it 21, 23, 20, 22, or 25? Ooh, a port number question. Oh, we got to remember port numbers. Well, you do need to remember port numbers. They come up, of course, in the A+ exam, something important that you should know about as you're working through it. If you think you know the answer, please don't put answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. We instead want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what you think the answer is. professormesser.com/QA is where you should go to be able to do that. Hopefully you're familiar with your port numbers. This is another one where you start working with these port numbers. Maybe you're configuring a firewall. Maybe you're setting up some type of system that needs to filter out port numbers. Maybe you're doing packet captures and you're noticing the port numbers come through. After a day of doing that, you'll have these port numbers locked down. You'll be able to do it without any problem whatsoever. And I notice a lot of you are punching in port numbers. It's going very quick again, but is this one where we really do know the port numbers, or are we trying to figure it out? It's always a challenge to go through and memorize everything and then try to recall what was that information that I had memorized. We'll have to figure out the details of that. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, An organization is auditing its legacy systems and discovers an older switch which only supports unencrypted remote management via a command prompt. Which TCP port is this switch likely using for these insecure administrative connections? Is that 21, 23, 20, 22, or 25? Oh, I can't wait. We're going to close the poll and see what the answer is. We did get a majority, not as big of a majority as I was expecting. I try to shoot for 50%. If we do better than 50%, we're doing great. In this case, 56% say the answer is 23. But is that the right answer? We need to look more into this, because you can see we got two very solid, effectively a tie for second place. 18% say the answer is 21. 17% say the answer is 22. And then we have single digits. 5% say the answer is 20. 3% say the answer is 25. This is the challenge when you start going through the memorization process and trying to remember what are the different things that we are doing with these port numbers. How are we using them? What is the information we need to know? This is a really good example of where understanding the port numbers are really going to help you a lot. You'll also notice in this list that we have here that the port numbers that are there are port numbers that are all in the 20s. And in fact, I think all of these are on the CompTIA certification exam. So you do need to know what those are as well. Some of the keywords from this question are unencrypted remote management and command prompt. I also put in a little extra just to make sure you got it, to say that it was an insecure administrative capability. So again, this is one of those where working through the details might help you quite a bit. So if we go with the majority, 56% of you said the answer is 23. Well, that is the right answer. That's exactly what we were looking for. If you want to know more about these port numbers, it's in my 220-1201 video course, section 2.1, and we talk about common port numbers. So if 23 is the right port number, why is that the right port number? 23 in itself is just a number. It doesn't mean anything, but a well-known number 23 is commonly used by the protocol Telnet. Telnet is a protocol that allows us to access a terminal or command prompt connection on a separate device. And when we start working through and understanding those, you'll notice, especially if you do a packet capture, it's all sent in the clear. So that's another challenge, is somebody might be capturing those packets. They'll be able to view your username, your password, and everything else that you type into that terminal. Not a great situation. So instead of using port 23, I would commonly request you that and recommend that you use port 22. Port 22 is SSH, Secure Shell. Secure Shell is a great way to perform effectively the same communication. It's remote access of a machine at the command prompt, but everything that you are using, everything that you're sending, everything that you're receiving, all of that data is encrypted. So that's one of the benefits of using SSH over Telnet, is you know that all of that information is secure. Now, there is a good use for Telnet, of course. We use Telnet for a lot of network troubleshooting tasks where you might want to pull an open port on a device and see if it provides you with any information. Might help you understand what type of device you're dealing with. That's sort of a one-off. Generally speaking, in the world of terminal communication, Telnet is wrong. Do not use Telnet. Instead, always use SSH. We had a couple of other 20 numbers on here. 20 and 21 are port numbers commonly associated with the file transfer protocol, or FTP. In this case, we're not transferring files. We are using this unencrypted remote management via command prompt. That's not a file transfer. That is a terminal communication that we would use Telnet or SSH with. And then port 25, SMTP, at least an unencrypted form of SMTP. We don't seem to use or find the simple mail transfer protocol, SMTP, used much anymore. Hopefully you're not seeing anyone use port 25 for that, for the same reason. You don't want to be able to see people's emails that are being sent back and forth between email servers. Instead, you want to keep that information private. Being able to keep that information private and encrypted means that we don't have to worry about somebody getting their hands on this by performing a simple packet capture. It's a great way to protect the data when it's going through the network. Understanding all of the port numbers that are listed in the official exam objectives are incredibly important. So make sure you are familiar with them. You've been using them. You've got them memorized. So if any of these type of questions show up, you know what the answer might be. Let me also give you a little tip about port numbers. If you're simply memorizing 20 FTP, 21 also FTP, 23 Telnet, 22 SSH, if that's all you're doing, you might be surprised when you get to the exam, because the exam wants you to do more than simply reiterate what the numbers are and what the protocols are associated with those numbers. And in fact, even memorizing the acronym name may not really be helpful to you either, especially because the questions you get on the exam might be very similar to this. I'm asking a question about unencrypted remote management, connecting to a terminal session. You in your mind have to automatically know, oh, that's going to be either Telnet or SSH. Oh, he said unencrypted? That's Telnet. Okay, what port number is Telnet? That's 23. Lock in your answer, 23. It's a multi-step process to get from the beginning to the end. You will practically never, if ever, on the exam be asked a question that is, what does SSH stand for? Secure shell. If you're spending all of your time memorizing acronyms that way, you're probably not going to do very well on the exam when those types of questions come up, because they want you to take it to the next step. And hopefully you were able to do that with this question as well. You're able to take it to that next step in working through what the answers might be for something like this. Let's now move into more of a memory question. I think I have another question available for you. We're doing very well on time. So let's go to our next poll and ask this question that says, a user is comparing two laptops. One laptop has a single 16 gigabyte RAM module, and another has two 8 gigabyte RAM modules. Why might the laptop with two 8 gig modules perform faster during memory intensive tasks? Would that be because of an increased storage capacity, reduced latency cycles, automatic ECC activation, dual channel throughput, or faster lookup times? Those are your possible answers. If you think you know the answers, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to answer this question. See if you know what it is. A little bit slower in answering this one than we were before, but they're still coming in pretty quick. We're locking in what we think the answer might be. This might be pretty good if you're someone who's working through the details of this. And if you start to get into a scenario where you're just trying to find and understand the technologies, these questions we do on our study group might help get you there. These are not an exact duplicate of the type of questions you might get on your exam, but we come very close. I tend to emphasize the fundamentals in our study groups. On the actual exam, the questions may have a little bit more difficult answers to choose from. That's by design. Our goal here is not to emulate an exam or try to trip you up. Our goal here is to help bring all of these different technologies together, and hopefully these things will start to gel as we go through these questions. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a user is comparing two laptops. One laptop has a single 16 gigabyte RAM module. Again, I'm with my Department of Redundancy department. And another has two 8 gigabyte RAM modules. Why might the laptop with two 8 gigabyte modules perform faster during memory intensive tasks? Would it be an increased storage capacity, reduced latency cycles, automatic ECC activation, dual channel throughput, or faster lookup times? What did we choose? Did we all go one way? Did we have a rainbow on this one? Let's close our poll. And the answer you chose is big numbers. 79% in being able to work through this was the answer that we were looking for. And that's a dual channel throughput was the answer that most of you chose. But is that the right answer? You can see that 17% of you said the answer is a reduced latency cycle. That's what the advantage of having those extra modules does. And then it's all down to single digits. We have increased storage capacity at 2%, faster lookup times at 2%, and automatic ECC activation at 0%. Nobody chose automatic ECC activation. Well, if we were to go with the crowd, I think we were going the right direction on that one. Dual channel throughput was the answer that we were looking for in this particular case. Now, why would dual channel throughput provide any help with the speed on your system? Well, if you had maybe a single module or you had multiple modules and a single pathway to communicate to the CPU, you would have something like this. This is a single channel memory. In fact, I think I have a single channel view of this that I could maybe step through. This is this idea of having multi-channel memory. It takes this idea of having a single pathway. Imagine this is probably one of the most used, the busiest data connections in your computer are between the memory and the CPU. That's what we're showing here. If there's a single path to get between those, really doesn't matter how many modules you have, you're limited by that single path. So if that's the real stumbling block, that single path that we have there, how can we increase the speed? Well, you simply add a separate pathway. Now you have multiple channels of communication between the memory and the CPU, and now we're able to send information on a much faster basis. We are effectively able to double the throughput, and because your CPUs, most of the time, your CPUs these days are so fast, most of the time they're sitting there waiting to get data from you. They could go much faster if you could just get the data over to the CPU just a little bit quicker. How could we do that? Well, let's add another pathway. And the more pathways we put in place, the faster that throughput might be. Obviously, there is a cost associated with multiple pathways, but we tend to see these integrated into our modern motherboards. You'll find dual channel, triple channel, quad channel. Check your motherboard documentation. It will tell you if you have this functionality supported in your computer. And on nicer motherboards, they even color code the different module slots. So you can see there are 2 black slots and 2 red slots. That's telling you if you have more than one module, put them into the same colored slot so that you can take advantage of these multiple pathways. This is very useful. In fact, if you have a look at your computer, take a note of what your motherboard happens to be, get documentation of your motherboard model, the make and the model, grab the documentation for your motherboard, and then go through the process of finding, does your motherboard support multiple channels to be able to send data back and forth from the memory. Then look at the memory on your motherboard. Do you have a single module or do you have multiple modules? If your motherboard supports multiple channels, are those modules in the right channel slot? So this is one of these cases where you might have bought a motherboard, you might have installed it yourself, and we've all done this. We just stick the memory in, it works, and we start using our system. But you may be missing half of the performance of that very critical pathway between the CPU and the memory. And by simply either getting another memory module and putting it into the other slot, or moving a memory module so that you are really using both of those channels, you may be able to have a huge performance increase by doing effectively no work, by simply moving a memory module, and now you're going much faster as it goes through the system. So a dual channel throughput is exactly the answer that we were looking for. That is what 79% of you chose. 17% said a reduced latency cycle. You know, all of this memory, when we request information from memory and have that information pulled out of memory, takes some time. There is a bit of latency. It's very fast, but it still takes, there's laws of physics involved, just like anything else. There's a latency associated with grabbing the memory, grabbing the information from the memory itself. And the memory has a latency value. It will tell you that this module has this type of latency. This other module has a different latency. Different modules might be faster or slower than others. So you do have to look through and understand more about what those differences might be. So in this case, the latency doesn't change. The module latency is exactly the same, but since you're able to pull from different modules at the same time, the overall performance is improved. So unfortunately, reduced latency cycles is not the answer that we were looking for. We also have answers on here with increased storage capacity. Well, if we are replacing different modules and we have reduced, if we have two 8 gig, but one 16, well, there's no difference in capacity. It is exactly the same from a capacity perspective. So that's another one of those situations where you might not want to have a single 16 gig module, have two 8 gig. You didn't lose any capacity, but you did improve the performance. One of those things that might help quite a bit. We also have 2% said a faster lookup time. Again, that's almost the same as the reduced latency cycle, but there is no faster lookup time. The memory modules are running at exactly the same speed. The latencies and the performance of the memory hasn't changed. We're just spreading that performance across multiple channels. And then automatic ECC activation in the world of memory, we have the ability to look for and correct any type of errors in the memory. You'll certainly see this as you're working through server type environments. We don't tend to see home computers have ECC memory inside of them because you don't tend to need it on a home-based system. So would not 0% of you chose that one. That is not the answer we were looking for either. The answer that we wanted was the one marked here, dual channel throughput, and 79% of you got that one absolutely correct. Let's move into a hypervisor question. You want to do something with a little bit of virtual machines, right? So let's do our next question. And it asks this one. It says, a security researcher has identified a vulnerability where a malicious process in a guest OS accesses memory belonging to the underlying hypervisor. Which of the following would best describe this type of security breach? Is that a VM escape, a hypervisor bypass, container drift, cross-site scripting, or VDI spoofing? Those are your 5 options. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. The question again asks, a security researcher has identified a vulnerability where a malicious process in a guest OS accesses memory belonging to the underlying hypervisor. Which of the following would best describe this security breach? Is that a VM escape, a hypervisor bypass, a container drift, a cross-site scripting, or VDI spoofing? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen. See if you happen to know what this one is. I think I put myself in the wrong place, didn't I? I need to be over here. There we go. Make that happen so that you can read everything if you're working through it. And if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer over on that site. A little bit slower on this one, really thinking about these different scenarios in this case. Might help you a little bit as you are going through and understanding more about virtual machines and the security associated with them. Security is a big deal. We certainly see a lot more with security on the Core 2 exam. There is security on this one as well. And this is a type of question you might want to deal with or run into when you're working through virtual machines and how you would manage those. Let's look at your answers. The question again asks, a security researcher has identified a vulnerability where a malicious process in a guest OS accesses memory belonging to the underlying hypervisor. Which of the following would best describe this type of security breach? Is that a VM escape? Is it a hypervisor bypass? Is it container drift? Is it cross-site scripting? Or is it VDI spoofing? And as we close the poll, we are a little torn on this one. This is probably the biggest rainbow we've gotten today, which is 54% say a VM escape, but 29%, almost a third of you, say it is a hypervisor bypass, and 11% say it's VDI spoofing. And then we have single digits for container drift and cross-site scripting. Not many people choosing those to be able to work through it. If you're working with virtual systems, you're working with virtual machines, this is a significant concern. Virtual machines are a bit of a challenge to manage because you've got all of these different operating systems and all of these different devices. There's a lot of activities and different applications being run on the same physical hardware. And of course, our primary goal for the hypervisor is not only to keep all of those systems running, but also to make sure that none of those systems can talk to each other. This is exactly where attackers want to find problems. If an attacker can get into the hypervisor and somehow move from one virtual machine into the hypervisor and jump into a separate virtual machine, that would obviously be very advantageous for the attacker, be very, very bad for us. Not something we want to see. This is not a pie in the sky idea. There have been vulnerabilities for hypervisors that allowed attackers to move from one VM to another, even when they were not supposed to. And this is referred to as VM escaping. And you'll often see this with malware that is designed to understand what it's doing. Malware, when it gets on a system, wants to know, is this a real unvirtualized system? Is this just someone's laptop? Is this someone's desktop computer? Or are we in a virtual environment? And if we are in a virtual environment, can I run an attack that will take advantage of a known vulnerability to perform VM escaping? Because then they could get into a very loosely secured system, but be able to hop over to a very secure system, even though they have no rights and no permissions to access that very secure system. They're able to simply jump from one guest operating system to another by using this VM escape process. Obviously, something you do not want to run into if you're working in a virtual environment. This could be super bad working through that. In this case, of course, that is the answer that we were looking for, VM escape. These other options that are in here, a hypervisor bypass. I just made it up. Normally I don't do that with these questions. Normally I like to put answers in here that are real things so that you can tie those back to the actual exam objectives. But in this case, I had to come up with something. Hypervisor bypass is a completely made up term that really does not apply to this particular scenario. I don't know, maybe somebody's used that term before. I don't know. But I just threw it in here so that we'd have something that was similar to the idea, similar enough that we could choose that one reliably, but not similar enough that it has anything to do with the problem that we're describing here. It is indeed a VM escape. 11% said VDI spoofing. We already talked about a virtual desktop interface in a previous question. I don't know who would spoof a virtual desktop interface. That's a couple words I stuck together that also don't really have any term or existence in the actual real world. So VDI spoofing, not a thing. 11% of you chose that one. Container drift, also not a thing, at least not to my knowledge. I like the term though. We should have a container drift and we should set a definition for container drift. I just like the way that sounds, but not as something that applies to this particular scenario. And cross-site scripting is a thing. I put something in here we would recognize, but cross-site scripting is usually when a script running on one machine will take advantage of the trust associated with another machine, effectively cross-site, being able to communicate from one site to another. That's a very broad term in how it's used these days, but still a very effective vulnerability and one we're constantly having to update. I think I did an update this weekend of some of the things on my website, and some of those had vulnerabilities associated with cross-site scripting. By updating and patching those, the website is locked down. It's one of those normal parts of management you have to deal with when working with software. In this case, if somebody is able to get onto one operating system and then access a different virtual machine operating system, that is indeed VM escape. That is the answer that we were indeed looking for. Hopefully that's given you an idea or at least a thought about some of the things you might run into when it comes to security, especially security in a virtualized environment, because that is not the scenario you would want to find yourself in a VM, to have somebody hopping around. When I first saw a VM escape, had to be over 10 years ago at this point. So this is a technology that's been around for a while. You do not want to be in a scenario where that's something you would have to deal with or worry about from that scenario, at least from a troubleshooting and management for security perspective, certainly not. Let's now, I want to give you another question. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I want to fit in one more question into our mix. As you probably just saw, this next question on our list is one that comes from my practice exams book. If you've not seen my practice exams book, this is a book I wrote because I went out to the internet and was just constantly disappointed over the quality of questions that were available on other sites, both free and commercial. I also found that a lot of the questions I was running into online are completely out of date. I see this all the time, by the way, in posts that people put on Reddit, where they've gone through my training course and then they go find some free questions online and they're asking about topics that weren't in my course. And they are incorrectly thinking, well, the course didn't have this content in it. No, that content is no longer in the course. You're studying from outdated materials. That's awful. That is not a place where you need to be. Don't waste your time and your effort and your cycles on out-of-date questions. Wouldn't it be great if there was a place that had updated questions where every question is guaranteed to be part of the existing CompTIA exam objectives, and the questions have been written with a similar tone and a similar style to the actual exam? Well, that describes my practice exams book to a T. I have personally written every single one of the questions in this book. That is not a bunch of AI slop that somebody's thrown into a book and trying to get one over on you. We've spent a lot of time going through every single question, looking at the complexity and the difficulty level of the question, creating them in a style that is very similar to what you would find on the actual exam, and then making sure that every single one of these has really the basics: proper grammar, proper spelling. I know, but this is what I found on the internet. And the questions themselves provide a little bit more than what you might commonly see. This is a book, by the way, with 3 separate practice exams in it. So 90 questions in each one of those, 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple choice questions. We get 3 of those in each book. So something you might want to consider. Let's go through a practice question from my book. So this might be a good one to go through. And I have a question right here. This is a question from page 7. This is a question A15, and it asks the question, which of the following would be most likely found on an optical disk? Would it be a document archive, operating system boot files, RAID parity files, or BIOS configurations? Now, again, we aren't answering in the chat room. This is just something for us to think about. We're not going to plug this one into our Vevox front end. But by the way, this is a PDF in the digital form. Obviously, if you have the book, you have exactly the same information that's in the book. You can go through it and read them on here. So either way, you're covered. You've got exactly the right information. Another thing that's nice about this, since this is a PDF, I can do some annotation. So let's choose the blue color. And let's see if I'm looking through and looking at detailed information. I might want to document or make notes on the page itself. If you have a stylus, you can write on this page. You can save it. So next time you load up the PDF, it has all of your notes inside of it. We don't restrict or prevent you from doing that as part of the PDF. I hate it when I get a PDF and it doesn't let you use the PDF functionality. Not so in this case. You can save, write, leave your notes, modify. You can do whatever you'd like. It's your book to do with as you please. You'll also notice there are 2 links to get an answer. One link says a quick answer, and if all you want to know is it A, B, C, or D, and you just want to get the answer and lock it in and you keep moving, that's the answer choice that you would choose. But the other answer is the details. The detailed questions give you an answer there. You can see one that's there for on page 50. Well, I'm on page 7. One of the things that I get really irritated with when working with a PDF is that I have to scroll through a PDF just to find what I'm looking for. Well, it's a PDF, so we can do this a little bit better. You'll notice when you highlight over either quick answer or the details, the mouse arrow turns into a hand, which means it's an active link. And if I click on the details 50, it moves me over. Well, I have to turn off my annotation. It moves me over to page 50. Boom. So just like that, I didn't have to scroll anywhere. It took me right to the question. In fact, it says right at the top, which of the following would most likely be found in an optical disk: document archive, operating system boot files, RAID parity files, BIOS configuration. It says the answer is A, document archive. And like many practice questions you'll find on the internet, it explains why the right answer is right. Well, this is a practice exams book. This is something that I'm hoping will help you with your studies, so we don't just stop there. The idea behind this is that you want to see what you don't know so that you better prepare for the exam. So it lends you to believe that perhaps there will be questions in this book that you might get wrong. Well, that's a great opportunity to understand more about why did I choose that wrong answer and what is the right answer that I should have chosen. So in my book, every single right answer is obviously documented as to why it is right, but every wrong answer is also documented to why it is wrong. So there's a very good example of kind of closing the loop, kind of figuring out, I got it wrong. Why did I get it wrong? Let me level set that with myself. Let me learn a little bit more about it. Let me understand why I got it wrong so that if this comes up on the exam, I'll understand more about this. So in this case, you'll see why operating system boot files, RAID parity files, and BIOS configurations would not be the right answer in this scenario. And if you read through the question and you just don't understand any of it, you don't understand exactly what's going on and what these terms mean, I put links right here to the video itself. You can either, if this is the printed book form, you can use your camera and just have a look at the QR codes that are inside of the book. These are good QR codes. A little different than bad QR codes. At least you know where the QR codes came from. They came from me. Or you can click the link that is in here that will open up your browser and you'll be able to access the video that was used to create this particular question. When we're done with this, we can, of course, we are in a PDF reader, of course, but I want to go back to where we started. I'm on page 50. You can see the 50 that's down here. I need to go back to page 7 or 14 or whatever that was, where your PDF reader has a back button in it. You may not even realize it's right there at the top. There's your back arrow. So I'll click the back arrow, click, and now we're back to where we started. We're back on page 7, and we can go to the next question that is in our list. So there's a very good example of how using this technology of a PDF not only provides you the ability to look at these questions wherever you might be. You don't have to be connected to the internet. You don't have to have a separate high-speed connection or be able to connect in real time. You can take this book or this PDF wherever you happen to go. This is something you think might help you. Have a look at our website, professormesser.com/core1pe, or look for the links for the practice exam on the main menu of the Professor Messer website. And if you get the practice exams for Core 1 and Core 2 at the same time, get a little bit of a discount. So if you're already working towards both of those exams, that might be something you might want to consider, and certainly something that helps support what we're doing here. Thank you so much for that continued support. All of the questions we went through today were all part of the official exam objectives. If you have not downloaded these objectives, you are doing yourself a significant disservice because everything you need to know is in this document. If you're ever wondering, is that topic on the exam? Is this topic on the exam? It's all listed in this single document. So let me pull up my set of exam objectives and I will show you what I mean. The exam objectives themselves are so valuable, and CompTIA tends to stick to these objectives like glue. Here's my copy of the objectives. This obviously is for the 2012-01 exam. The first couple pages just give you a little bit of information about the exam itself. They give you a breakdown of the different domains of the exam. There are 5 domains on the Core 1. They are mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, or hardware and network troubleshooting. And you can see the associated percentages associated with all of those. Certainly something you might want to consider. We also have a breakdown, a objective by objective by objective breakdown to exactly the things you need to know for the exam. So given a scenario, monitor mobile device hardware and use appropriate replacement techniques. This is section 1.1, and it deals with battery, keyboard keys, random access memory, hard drive, SSDs, wireless cards. So you get a full list of everything that's there. In fact, if you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would like to send you an email that includes a digital signature that certifies that you were here for 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that email is you must follow these steps. First, go to professormesser.com and click either at the top or the bottom of the website is a link for Contact Us. Click that Contact Us link. It will bring up a form. In that form, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put A+ Core 1 April, and I think that's all you need to put, maybe April 2026. That would help me a lot. So I know exactly what we're talking about. And in the body of the message, there's a little section there where you can put a message in. In that body, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, certification exam objectives. That's your super secret code word of the month, certification exam objectives. If you do that, I will, in about a week or so, send you this email, digitally signed by me, that gives you 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. This applies whether you are watching live or watching on demand. It doesn't matter in CompTIA's perspective, but you have to get the email from me, especially if you're watching it on demand. It's one of the most recent rules from CompTIA, but I send this email to everybody. If you send me the request, I send you the email, whether you need it or not. So I will absolutely get all of that to you. That is how you can earn an hour of that webinar category CEU in that very view. We do one of these study groups once a month. That is quite a bit, by the way. Once a month, our next study group, if we were to look at, let's go to April, because we're not really done with April. We just started April. You'll notice we're here on the 6th. We have another A+ study group on the 9th. That's my Core 2 study group. Normally, we do these on a Tuesday or a Thursday. This is an unusual Monday if you're here live with us here on the 6th. We don't commonly do that on Monday. I think that's why my video wasn't working properly, because it's Monday. Just my thought. I'm just wondering. Could be it. So in April, on the 9th, later this week, we're doing our Core 2 study group. I've already written the questions. They're already ready for you. I can't wait for you to see those. We also have our Network Plus study group on the 14th and Security Plus on April the 22nd. If you want to get to the next Core 1 study group, head over next month to May. Currently, they are scheduled on May 5th and May 7th for the Core 1 and Core 2 study groups. May 13th is our Network Plus. Then I kind of stuck my bye week in the middle of the month of May, which means our Security Plus study group is on the 27th. And if you're watching this video, this is not April, this is not May, we're well after all of that, then you can always find out when the next live event is going to be by following the link right here, professormesser.com/calendar, or using the calendar link at the top of the Professor Messer website. It's a great way to keep track of when we're doing a live stream, and a great way to know what the most updated dates are. For example, this month, we originally had this study group scheduled on the 7th, and I had to move it from the 7th back to the 6th. So if you're showing up tomorrow to watch the live stream, you may have wanted to check the calendar to know that it got moved up a little bit. I apologize after the fact. I was going to say in advance, but I can't do that in advance because time and the way that it works. So that is exactly where you can come back and see our next study group. But we're not done today. Even though we're finished with the first hour, I've been asking you questions. It's now time for you to ask me questions. You can do that in our after show using that same link that we used earlier, professormesser.com/QA. That link will give you everything you need to be able to ask questions of me. There's a little link at the top, and you could submit those questions to me at any time. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. You could save quite a bit of money by simply buying the vouchers on the Professor Messer website. Again, these are exactly the same vouchers you would get from the CompTIA website. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, we have our course notes, our success bundle, our practice exams, and so much more on our website, professormesser.com/1201success. And if you want to find us on social media, just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us, /Facebook, /LinkedIn, /Instagram, /X, /Discord. You get the idea. It's an easy way to find us wherever we might be. It's also a great way to find out what the next thing might be that we're working on. You can find out a lot on social media, and it's a great way to contact us directly. Well, we've come to the end of our first hour, but that's okay. We got a lot more to do coming up next. Join us for our after show, a more casual opportunity for you to ask me questions. But I also want to thank you for being here in this first hour. We could not do these live streams without you. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let me take a sip. I made it through the study group. And even with the video being out and the weird stuff happening on the screen, I made it through the study group. So that's something anyway, as we work through this. I'm so glad we were able to make that happen. Okay. And I was able to use my new, you can't really see it here. I was able to use my new prompter, which you sort of see the bottom of it here. I put the chat on there because when I had my presentation up on the single machine, I couldn't see the chat. And I like being able to see you guys and chat back and forth to you. So it was kind of nice to have that there, but still have, let me get rid of me there, but still be able to have this because my camera is behind the prompter. So I'm reading the text on the screen, but you are seeing me look at the camera, which is the whole point of a prompter after all. So that's sort of a good way to set these up and get them going. And I do have to, and this whole problem, by the way, the whole issue that we ran into was this. When I, the laptop that I have is a MacBook. I've had it forever. It is an Intel version of this MacBook. It's a great laptop. It's been working fantastic for us. And when I connected it, this is a USB-C to HDMI converter. And when I connected it to initially, and I was looking at the options for connecting it, my previous laptop had a direct HDMI out. It was very simple. So I have to do a conversion now from USB-C to HDMI, and then I have a separate converter, which I have right here. A moment, please. I have a separate converter that converts from HDMI. There's the HDMI connector. I could also bring in separate audio if I wanted to, but I do not want to. I just plug in HDMI and it converts it to, what is that? It converts it to this BNC connector. This is an interface that we often use in sort of a commercial, semi-professional, I would say definitely semi-professional mode, to be able to have a digital video output on coax. So a lot of the video in this studio is all running through this coax connection. So this coax and the way that this video is sent is with SDI. The serial data interface, I think is what that stands for, but that is sending this video signal to all of these different systems so that I can have the video switcher. So you can see there's a video switcher up here, and it's able to connect all of my desktops and laptops together. It goes into a single system. So there's literally thousands of dollars of investment in SDI technology in the studio. What breaks? The $20 adapter. Oh, I guess this is an Apple adapter, the $40 adapter. That's what broke. That's what is not working. So I will be buying a new one of these on the internet. I spent an hour troubleshooting because was it the HDMI cable? Was it the coax itself? Was it the connection into the video switcher? These are all the kinds we deal with. So in this case, I think we just sort of lost the connector that we had there. So that's why you had me struggling through all of those and trying to make that happen. So now we get to the after show part. And in the after show part, this is where I look through the questions that you are submitting to me. And as I often mention, you can submit those questions for the second hour at any time using that same link we've been using this whole time. That's the link. It is the one for professormesser.com/QA. Be a great way to do it, being able to work through it. So make sure you are familiar with the different options there. I'm going to pull up the questions that you have submitted to me in this view and be able to break all of these down as well. So these are good questions. These are the common questions. We start working through this and having these available. This question is in fact, we could use this for really anything, but I think it touches a nerve, and I want to jump right on that nerve with you and see if we can make things feel a little bit better for you. This is from EP. EP says, can you please explain in what situation I would have to know I'm adding a little bit of emphasis here, T568A and T568B, and what I would be doing exactly with these as someone working in IT. So I get the anger. I'm right there with you. Having to memorize, having rote memorization, it's kind of a pain. But a lot of what we do in our industry is rote memorization. We have to memorize certain pieces of technical details so that we can then put them in their right category and pull out that information when we're doing troubleshooting, when we're talking to someone else, when we're designing a network, when we're installing a system. All of these things really apply. So I think that's where you really run into this scenario here where it seems pointless. It's just memorizing colors. Why are we doing this? So EP, I'm sort of there with you on why are we doing this? Well, it turns out it is a very, very popular standard. So popular that any network you walk into, anywhere in the world, I would argue at this point, anywhere in the universe, your Ethernet cables will be wired with one of these color types, either T568A or T568B. The reason we created these standards is to ensure that we would have a standardization universally. That makes it very easy because you're probably either planning to get into an IT role, or you might already be in an IT role and you're already working with these cables. You have these cables at home. So grab a patch cable. Do I have a patch cable handy? I do not. So grab a patch cable, pull that patch cable over, and look at the wires in the patch cable. So that's one where if you look at those, you will see that they are wired either as T568A or T568B. They really are. You will not run into, if you find a cable with other coloring, you should really find out where that cable came from and never purchase a cable from that location again. Or maybe you're the one that made it. Now you can rip that up and do it another way. The problem is it's sort of, people look at it as, is there a special reason that pin 1 is that color and pin 2 is the other color and pin 3 is the color? There are some reasonings behind why we chose those specific colors, but we could have put them in any order we wanted. We could have put orange, green, blue, brown, solid, and then orange, green, blue, brown, striped. We could have that could have been pins 1 through 4 and pins 5 through 8. We could have done it that way, and it would have worked just fine. It would have worked exactly the way it works today. In fact, if you wanted to build your own cables, you could put them in any color scheme you would like. The problem is when someone else comes in to troubleshoot your network, or perhaps you leave your current position and you go to another company, are you going to have to memorize a whole new set of colors? You do not, because you're either using 568A, you're most likely everybody's using 568B. The vast majority of places that I've been have been 568B. It's just a very standard way of doing this. So that's why we go through this process of making sure you know what those colors are, because the last thing we want you to do is to be able to maybe crimp your own cables and just use whatever colors you wanted. That doesn't help you down the line figuring out when you need to troubleshoot. And that's where the troubleshooting starts, by the way. Cannot tell you how many times I need a patch cable very badly. Where did I put my patch cable? I got it in here. Hold on. Wait a second. Patch cable. Do I have one? No. HDMI. Patch. I got a USB. No, it's a HDMI. Oh, I think it's a DisplayPort to HDMI. Those are super useful to have sitting around. Not. So, but what we used to do, and you should do this with any patch cable you have, put them up next to each other with the RJ45 connectors and see if all the wires on both sides are the same. You know, look at pin 1 on one, pin 1 on the other side, and see if they're the same color. Then look at pin 2 to pin 2. You should be able to do your own pin out. You should be able to do your own mapping of where the wires are going by simply looking at that cable. And you should be able to look at it and say, oh, that's a straight through cable. Pin 1 goes to pin 1, pin 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, and etc. Or maybe you look at that cable and you notice they are not a 1-to-1. Pin 1 is going to pin 1, pin 2 is going to pin 2, pin 3 is going somewhere else. So you may be able to figure out what that cable was used for just by looking at the pinouts. And you might say, well, this is a straight through cable. This is a crossover cable. And although it's been removed from the current exam series, you might have a rollover cable where pin 1 goes to pin 8, pin 2 to 7, 3 to 6, and so on. Some old serial connections, especially to switches and routers, use those rollover cables. Thankfully, we don't use those much anymore. These days, almost everything is USB. USB-A or USB-C. Although you might still find a serial connection out there somewhere. The older 9-pin serial is what's there. But that is why, if you are wondering, why am I learning all of these pins, these colors? Why am I learning port numbers? They don't seem to have a connection to the world. That's why in our port number video, I try to take you through each one of the, this is port number 22. It's SSH, that stands for Secure Shell. But what is that? How does that help me? When would I use this? Where would we see other people using it? And that's the important part of this exam, is putting all of that in context. It's more than just memorizing 22 is SSH, SSH means Secure Shell. You need to understand what that means. How would I use it? When would I use it? What do I need to be able to use it? We talk about all that in the video. So bear with there's not a ton of rote memorization in the exam anymore. A lot of the memorization part of the exam has been removed. In fact, if a lot of people still come up to me and say, where is the troubleshooting steps? Or where is the, what's another one that was removed? Where are all of the 802.11 standards and their frequencies and their speeds and their... Well, CompTIA rightly looked at this enormous list of standards. There must have been 6 of them or so through the years. And if you look at those, the first 2 on the list are 802.11a and 802.11b. 2 standards that we had to memorize frequencies, speeds, and really understand more about them. But you'll never see those standards being used in actual networks because they are so old and so slow and have been updated so many times since then. You aren't going to find a 802.11a or 802.11b. If you do, let me know. There's got to be maybe one that is still turned on in the back room of an old warehouse somewhere, right? With like a layer of dust on top of it. You always run into those things. So I'm sure there's one somewhere that is running, but you will not run into it. You will not find it. It's another example of how they've tried to make and they're doing a very good job of trying to make the exam focus more on things that are important to know rather than simply sending out a bunch of memorized information to you. And I think we've done a very good job in our course of not just telling you about the topics and the ideas, but any time that we're able to demonstrate those, we do so in our course so that you're able to keep up with those as well. Great question. Thank you for sending that one in. Maybe you see now we're a little better. Take a deep breath. Now we understand why that happened. So we're good. If you'd like to leave a question for me, please add it to this list at professormesser.com/QA. We'll break these out and have a look at more as we go. Let's talk about logistics, shall we? The next on this list, we're going to take a question from Sarah. Sarah asks, is it worth learning all of Core 1 first and then do the exam, and then learn all of Core 2 and do the exam? Or do we go through the process of learning Core 1 and Core 2 and then take both exams on the same day? Well, this is one where the answer really is, it depends. But it doesn't depend on a lot. This is very easy to break out in my mind. I will say first that the Core 1 exam objectives and the Core 2 exam objectives are very different than each other. There is very little overlap between Core 1 and Core 2. That's one of the great things that helps quite a bit. The overlap, the very minor overlap you will find is so inconsequential that I tell people, focus on one at a time. You can take them in any order. So pick one, learn everything about that particular exam, go take the exam, and then shift your gears over to the extra exam that's there. So if you want to take Core 1 first, learn all the Core 1 objectives, go through Core 2, or go through all the Core 1 objectives, go through the Core 1 practice questions, maybe do some Core 1 hands-on, Core 1, Core 1, Core 1. Do everything with Core 1. Go take the Core 1 exam, go pass the Core 1 exam. Then push all of that stuff to the side and then focus on Core 2 and do exactly the same thing. Study Core 2 videos, read your Core 2 book, go to Core 2 Q&A, do some Core 2 hands-on, take the Core 2 exam, pass your Core 2 exam, and then you are A+ certified. That is something that commonly it takes 2 to 3 months to finish one of these exams for somebody who's just starting out. So spend your first 2 months on Core 1, take the exam. Then the next 2 months, Core 2, and take the exam. There will be people, though, that you will hear, especially on the internet, I took both Core 1 and Core 2 the same day. That is something that if you are brand new to this content, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage by doing that. You probably do not want to take Core 1 and Core 2 on the same day unless the scenario is one where you've already been in the industry for a while. Maybe you have a help desk. Maybe you've worked as a systems engineer or a desktop administrator or server administrator. You've done some work in the industry. You understand the hardware. You understand the networks. You understand the operating systems, and at least you understand a little bit of the security associated with it. That means that you might be able to get through all of this content for both exams in a few weeks. You might be able to get all of it, and it's not a big deal for you. That means that you could potentially walk into an exam room and take both exams on the same day without any significant disadvantages. That is a rare occasion, though. That's an unusual scenario. That is as we say in the industry, that's a corner case. So that is not a scenario where you would probably find yourself dealing with that. So I would say for the vast majority of us, you want to take one of these at a time, study everything with Core 1, do the Core 1 exam, then shift gears over to the other. You do not have to take them on the same day. There is a time component to this, however. You have to take both of the exams from the same exam series. And as I mentioned in our earlier presentation, let me bring up the exact date that I calculated here. Remember that the current A+ exams were released in March of last year, which means these exams will still be around until what we estimate to be about September of 2028. So you have to take the Core 1 exam and the Core 2 exam from the same series, which means you have to take both of them by September of 2028. That's your only time constraint. There's no time constraint between the exams. There's no limitation. Once you take one exam, you've taken that exam and it's locked in until September of 2028. Now, what if you only took one exam, September 2028 comes along and the exam series retires? Then you have to start over, which is why I bring that up. So there is an important deadline. That deadline is September 2028 as we sit here in April of 2026. So if you're watching this video and it is after September 2028, make sure you look at the dates on the CompTIA website for the current exam series. I don't know what the next exam series in 2028 will be, the 1301 and 1302. I don't know. When we get to September of 2028, I'll answer that question then. But for the meantime, as long as all of your study materials say the 220-1201 and the 220-1202, you are studying from the right materials and you have plenty of time, tons of runway to be able to pass both of those with plenty of time to spare. So there's your deal. You do not have to take them both on the same day, nor do I recommend that you do so. That would just be something. Can you imagine both of those on the same day? That's got to be a challenge, right? People do it. Unfortunately, I hear people both say, I took both on the same day and I passed them both on A+ certified, but I also get a lot of reports from people that say, I took them both on the same day and I failed one of them. So now I have to go back and take the other, or they might have failed both. That does happen as well because they thought you had to take them both at the same time. You do not. Don't do that. There's so much information and material in there. You do not want to do that. All right. Studio question. This is from Mito asks, where can I see what kind/brand of laptop stand that you have? Boy, this is a good question, and a question that is unfortunately outdated because the laptop stand that I have, I don't think is being made anymore, but they have a replacement for it, a similar idea. So for those of you that kind of keep your eyes on the studio, this is the studio connection. This is the laptop that is not working. So we're going to do this. And here's the stand. Here we go. This is a, let's have a look at what this stand, this is just, this is, when I got it, a great stand. This is how it sits. So you can put your laptop in it. You can put cables through that come out of the laptop. They go through the backside, and then you can send those cables off to wherever they need to go, so they're not just hanging there. It's a great stand, but it is just one solid piece of metal. That's it. So you can't really adjust it up or down, which is what I really want. I really want a way to do it. And the next one I do, I'll probably get one of the stands that I have here that my monitors are on. I'll get a monitor stand and put a laptop stand on that, and then I'll just be able to move it around without having a separate stand like this there. But this has worked very well. In fact, I'm missing now parts of it. You can see I've got the bumpers have sort of been moved off. Half the bumpers, it has gone through quite a bit. This is if I can read it, a Rain Design M stand. Rain Design. It's got a little rain drop there. Rain Design M stand. Didn't make any sense to me either, right? That's what they called it, an M stand. Now I would probably buy something different. Probably get something that was more, would move a little bit better with back and forth with the laptops that I use. But this has been very good. It's been a good one to use. So I'm kind of happy with what we've done with this one, but it's just a big solid piece of metal. It's not like it's going to wear out. I need to get some more bumpers on there and just keep the whole thing going because it's worked very well for what we've been doing so far. Let's do some more questions. If you ever wanted to see, I don't have my laptop stand on this page. I probably should put it there. Lori, if you're still watching this nonsense, you can send me an email reminding me to add that to my studio page, which is at professormesser.com/studio. There's also a single link from there. The studio page has a list of all the things we use in the studio. The microphone that I'm using right here, the Heil PR40. Fantastic mic, been using it forever. The camera we're using right now is a Lumix S5 2X. It is a great 4K camera to have here. Now it's hidden behind the prompter that I got, so you don't see it much anymore, but it's back there. I've got a lot of work I still need to do with that one, so we'll work on that. The video switcher I'm using, the audio mixer that I've got here, and then other equipment that we use that you really can't see, like those mini converters I was showing you before. That's where they are. The video recorders, the lights that we use, the laptop and the keyboard and the mouse that we use. It's all on here. You can see all of those things that we use on in that view. That can also help you. Maybe you're trying to build your own studio equipment and put your own things up. You can see what I'm using, which may not necessarily fit your scenario, but you can always send me an email if you have a question and working through those. Let's keep going through the questions that you have submitted. And if you'd like to submit a question, you can do that at any time by going to professormesser.com/QA. I got a lot of questions in. There are a lot of questions I get every time we do one of these where somebody asks, do you have a cloud course? Do you have a Cisco type course? Do you have a course on this other CompTIA certification? Do you have currently all of the courses that we support are on our website. Currently, the list is A+ Core 1, A+ Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus. And we don't have anything to announce at the moment. But we're always trying to figure out if we release a new course tomorrow, what would that course be? And so I'm always doing the calculations, the popularity of different courses, what people are doing with them. You know, we had to make a few challenging decisions when, you know, about a year and a half ago, when the AI craze, I think AI, I kind of think of it as we're doing maybe some type of trendy thing. We're all selling cupcakes. There's cupcake stores. Now suddenly there are no cupcake stores. It seems like we're starting that process. The cupcake stores are going away. We're seeing a lot less emphasis these days in some of those things. So we had to make decisions on, do we do a course that has an AI focus? Do we not do a course that is an AI focus? I think you can see where we landed on that one. But we also have to think about what other technologies are interesting. What other technologies do people need? These all go into the formula that we use, which is not a detailed formula we do. It's more of a figuring out. You look at where things are trending in the world and you figure out the pieces on that. So who knows what the next course might be someday, but just keep your eyes open. If we have a new course available, it will always be on our website. That's where you could go to figure out all of those. In fact, I got other questions in here about other types of courses. So if you ask that particular one, that kind of covers all of those questions all at once to be able to work with them. I've used a couple of terms, and there is some AI, properly so. Thank you, chat room, saying Core 2 has a section on AI. Of course, we have a video on that where we talk about some of those AI terms. But there are some AI-specific certifications now. That's the one I was referring to. That do we do a certification course on those AI topics? No, not going to waste my time with that. It'll be gone before we get it done. It's one of those scenarios. Let's go to, here I've been using some terms lately with, especially even today. And Ethan called me out a little bit and said, what is the difference between a patch cable and a network cable? And I'll just add to this. You seem to be using the terms interchangeably. Stop it. I think that's a fine criticism, but they are effectively the same thing. Effectively. Let's talk about the way you would use these terms in a practical sense. If you have a cable that you are using to connect a device to a jack in the wall, you brought in a laptop, you need to connect it to a wired network connection, you plug in that to the wall. The cable between the wall and your device is often referred to as a patch cable because we're patching into the network. Similar idea over in the closet. You know, that cable goes through the wall, it goes up above the ceiling, it comes down into a closet that's probably way on the other side of the floor, and it goes into a closet that probably has some type of punch down blocks inside of it. And that cable is sort of permanent. It never moves. It's punched down on the wall. It goes, you can't even touch it. It's in the wall, it's in the ceiling, it comes down the other wall, and then now it's punched into punch down blocks. So it's sort of a permanent connection between that outlet in the wall and that closet. Well, then how do you connect it to a switch? Well, you need a patch cable to patch between the punch down block and the switch connection. So we use that term patch to really talk like the last connection between the infrastructure and our device. We often refer to that as a patch cable. It is just as reasonable to call it a network cable because it is a network cable. It's an Ethernet cable. I might call it a patch cable. Could you hand me that Ethernet cable? Could you hand me that straight through cable? Could you hand me that Ethernet network cable? We can combine these together. It's effectively the same cable. We're really just talking about a cable that is a straight through cable that we're using to patch in or connect in to the existing network connection. Jumper cable. There's another one. People use jumpers. Hand me a jumper. That's absolutely, we use that term all the time. So you'll hear it used in a number of different ways, but it's effectively a network Ethernet jumper patch straight through. See, it's easy to remember once you get in there. And of course, somebody's probably kind of come up with another set of names. I hear people use sort of their own terms whenever we go to different places, which is fine. As long as everybody knows what it is, call it whatever you'd like. We're just fine there. So hopefully that clears up the use of these cable terms that we are using. Maybe not clear up as much as make more complicated. You're welcome. Let's go through more questions that we have. Here is one that I don't think I've answered yet today from Jenny. Jenny M says, if you could give one tip, for studying for this exam, what would it be? All right. This is probably the one, this is a combination of the best tip I can give you and probably also the tip that is most overlooked. This is the one tip that I would provide, which starts with, probably most of you who've followed this for a long time know what my answer already is, and it's this right here. Have you downloaded the exam objectives? I cannot tell you. I probably can tell you if I go back and look, but it's very difficult to put into a quantity how many people have come to our website into the chat and they have said, I took the exam and I got a lot of things on the exam I was not expecting. I got a lot of topics I was not expecting. And of course we say, well, don't tell us about the exam, but can you tell us maybe an idea of what a topic might be that appeared on your exam that you were not prepared for? And they would say, yeah, I got a question about multi-channel memory. There you go. There's an example of one of the things they might have said. And of course, our response to them, as you already know, is, well, that's in the exam objectives. Multi-channel memory, you should be able to go to maybe the hardware section under the memory, under the RAM characteristics. There is a channel configurations option right there in the official exam objectives under section 3.3, compare and contrast RAM characteristics. And there it is. And it's called channel configurations. You know, it's in the exam objectives. How were you not prepared for the exam? And their response is, exam what? What's that? Something objectives? What are you talking about? What are you referring to? I'm referring to the official exam objectives, of course. It is this document that contains every single bullet of what you need to know for the exam, to the point that they stick to this so closely that if you know every single bullet in this document, you will crush this exam easily. And their response always is, well, I didn't know about that document. I never heard of that. I did not know this document existed. Had they known about this document prior to taking the exam, this is a great checklist. So let me give you an example. So let's take and go through this list, and we'll start with section 1.0, mobile devices. And it says, given a scenario, monitor mobile device hardware and use appropriate replacement techniques. And let's say that you are familiar with batteries. You have replaced batteries in a laptop before. You're very, very familiar with batteries. Maybe we mark that one in our list. Maybe I'll turn on annotation. There we go. And maybe we'll mark batteries as I know and can explain batteries to you, except I marked it in blue, which is not what I wanted. I wanted to say that I knew it really well. We're marking it in green. Great. Replacing keyboards and replacing keys. Well, I've replaced a laptop. I watched somebody replace a laptop keyboard before. I think I got a pretty good idea of how to do that. We removed screws. The laptop came off. The keyboard came off. I pulled it out. We put it in. Okay, I'm going to mark that one as green. I'm pretty familiar. Random access memory. You know, I haven't done that on a laptop before. I've watched a video of someone doing that. I think I know that one pretty well, but it might be worth kind of going back over it again. Let's mark that one as yellow. One thing I have not done is replace a hard drive or an SSD inside of a laptop, and I'm not even sure how to do that, so we'll mark that one as red. So this is a very good sort of a hot, medium, cold kind of scenario, hot, warm, and cold. So these are the topics. Go through this entire document and mark the things that you know and the things you don't know. This would probably be best just before planning to schedule your exam. You've gone through the videos, you've read your books, you've done some hands-on, you've done some practice exams. Now, how well do you know this content? And if you start to see topics in here that start coming up as red, maybe this difference between 2.45 and 6 gigahertz, maybe once you go through this, you think, wait, I don't remember that part. I need to go through that again. But I do remember the channels very well. Let me mark that one in green. I do remember the channels very well, and the regulations and the channel selection and the widths and the frequency and the bands and the Bluetooth and what 802.11 standards are and what NFC is and what radio frequency is. I'm trying to do this very quickly and it's not going so well. There we go. So in this section, maybe you know all of the others, but now there's 3 topics you need to go back over because you really don't know them well. Once you're done with this, you want to go through and study the red stuff first, study the yellow stuff next, and you'll be ready, really ready for this exam. That's the number one study tip I can give you. Because although, and people come back with me and say, well, you really shouldn't put such an emphasis on the exam, because if you look at the information in the exam objectives itself, it says the lists of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objective may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document. And this is the biggest pushback I always get about the exam document is, why would I study this document? They clearly tell you the exam goes beyond the document. Oh, really? Well, let me tell you, they stick to this list like glue. They hardly ever, in fact, there'll be many times you go through your entire exam, they never deviate from this list. That was very good legal talk. The lawyers were able to put in their disclaimer because maybe they do eventually want to put something in that might be different than the objectives, but it is so rare. It is so unusual. It is so outside the scope of what is normal that if you memorize and you know every single one of these topics, you understand them, you know how they're used, you're familiar with these technologies, you've gone through, marked them red, yellow, green, you've done as much green as possible, 90% of this is green, you're ready to take your exam because they've listed it out for you, and they just never deviate from the list. Even though they tell you they might, they never do. So don't be fooled by that. Especially, I see this most when I mentioned earlier that I go to a lot of sites looking at their practice test questions, and sometimes I'll see horribly outdated content. They're asking a question about a topic that hasn't been covered in the exam for 6 years. And I'll send a note saying, hey, this is kind of out of date. You might want to remove that. We don't even use this technology anymore. And they go, nope, because the exam objectives tell you that they could ask anything. So that justifies us having outdated content on our website. Like, that does not justify that. You're doing a disservice to people because they stick to this list like glue. So make sure you stick to this list like glue as well. Don't worry about the green. Focus on the objectives. You'll do fine. That is my biggest number one tip I can give you for working through the studying for this exam. Something you might want to consider as well. Let's keep going through your list here. Others that are there. Got a lot of great questions coming in. Thank you so much for sending these to break these down. We talked in the study group, there was a question about the VM escape, virtual machine escaping, where you could be on one virtual machine and then somehow break out of the VM through the hypervisor and gain access to a different operating system that you should not have access to. Clearly, these virtual machines should be completely separate. You should not be able to break out of one virtual machine and get access to another virtual machine. That should never happen. So my good friend Anonymous posted a question that said, well, can you mitigate the risk of a VM escape in whole or in part? How do you stop this from happening? How do you prevent this from occurring? It sounds like a bad thing. Well, it doesn't just sound like a bad thing. It really is a bad thing. You do not want a VM escape. To be fair, even though we mentioned VM escape as being a security concern, it's a very rare security concern. This is something it'd be very unusual to find these things happen, but they do happen. In fact, let's do a little bit of research, shall we? I'm going to type in VM escape vulnerability, and let's pick on VMware, but this happens across the board on all of these. And the one that you will see, one of the first links I got here, when was this? The problem when you go online, of course, is when things were written. So last year, this is 3 zero-day vulnerabilities discovered in VMware products. And these are CVE 2025 version. So this is from the year 2025. So we have this breakdown, and you can see it says chaining these 3 vulnerabilities together allows an attacker to escape or break out of a child virtual machine, gain access to the parent hypervisor, and potentially access accessible VMs. So although it is rare, it does happen. So we have to be familiar with it. And they give you a little breakdown of this. Here is the mitigation. They even put it on here. We recommend upgrading to fixed versions indicated in the VMware by Broadcom matrix immediately. That's your mitigation. You can't, once somebody finds a vulnerability, you can't stop it. You can't get there. That's a bit of a challenge. You can't quite, where'd I go? There we go. You cannot can't fix it once somebody finds the hole. Once somebody finds the gateway into the other world, you can't really close that gateway. They're already through it. They're already into it. And you didn't know it was there to begin with. So this is the way we do it. We just patch it. There's not much mitigation you can do for a hypervisor vulnerability like that. I guess it depends on the vulnerability, but most of these types of vulnerabilities aren't things where there is something you can mitigate or restrict. If it was a network-based vulnerability, it was coming across the network, there might be an IPS signature that we could create or some type of network filter in our intrusion prevention system where if it sees that particular attack, it can block the attack, and now we don't have to worry about it. Then we don't have to worry so much about fixing or patching that system because we're blocking it on the network side. Of course, that's only blocking some of the attacks. What if the attack comes from the inside? So mitigation, the mitigation you're doing and the scope of that mitigation becomes important so that you understand how much of this is still at risk, even after maybe putting in an IPS vulnerability, assuming that's even an option. Very often it is not, and the only way to mitigate is to patch. That's all you can really do. So that's a great way to kind of hunt things down. I search for VM escape vulnerability in VMware, and that's one that I got. But as I mentioned, these types of vulnerabilities are everywhere. And here's the scary part, of course, is these types of vulnerabilities are probably in your software today. They're probably in your hypervisor right now. There could very potentially be a VM escape vulnerability in the software you're using right now. But we don't know about it. And it could be that the attackers haven't found it yet, but it's in there. We just don't know. So it's a race. Who finds it first? Do the white hat hackers find it first so they can submit their vulnerability to that manufacturer and have them pay out a little finder's fee? Or do the attackers find it first? And the attackers aren't going to tell anybody. The attackers are going to start writing code to take advantage of that vulnerability. Is the attacker, what is their motivation? So this might be someone looking for some financial benefit. It might be a government trying to take down another government. It might be someone just trying to create chaos. We just never know. But that vulnerability itself becomes very important, which is why we always tell you, keep your system patched, keep your system up to date. And I can't tell you how many times relatively smart people come to me and they say, well, I don't need to patch now. I looked at the vulnerabilities that were out there and none of those vulnerabilities really apply to me. I don't run into those scenarios, so I'm not going to patch today. Well, the problem is that we don't know what we don't know. And keeping everything up to the latest version ensures that there's no possible way the known vulnerabilities can be caught. And very occasionally makes sense that fixing the known vulnerabilities could potentially resolve unknown vulnerabilities. So staying at the latest version, that's why it's so important. And I realize there's a side B to that, of course, which is if you are creating a new version of software, the creation of the new content could itself have vulnerabilities. Yes, it could. Looking at you, Microsoft, deploying a patch could effectively create a new vulnerability. This unfortunately does happen occasionally. Again, that one is sort of rare. So thankfully, that's something we have to worry about too much. Let's keep going on this list. A lot of great questions coming through. Many of them dealing with my good looks, and I appreciate that. We don't have to go through that. I think it's sort of a given. It's a known quantity. We don't have to go through that detail. But we do have other questions that have come in. Some folks have even asking for other things. Some folks are asking for a Network Plus Practice Exams book. So for those of you that are familiar with my practice exams, let me grab the book. Oh, there it is. So the Practice Exams book, this is the one for Core 1. I have one for Core 2. I have one for Security Plus. I do not have one for Network Plus. Where is it? Where's the Network Plus one? Doesn't exist at the moment, but stay tuned. Maybe we can get one done this year. Maybe we can get one out to you in the next number of months. It is something that we do plan on releasing one. I just do not have dates for you. but there's active work being done. So hopefully someday, I don't have anything, it obviously it's not going to happen next week, but someday I do hope that in the future, we will have a Network Plus practice book. That is my goal. That is my objective. We'll make some of these things happen. I'd love to have one. I'd love to have more than one. I think we should double the number of practice books that we have. I think there's a lot of people needing the practice, needing the help. So I'm more than happy to write those and make those happen. So we have plans to do a number of different interesting things with practice questions, multiple choice questions, performance-based questions, a lot of good stuff, a lot of good things that are there. Other questions that you have, I know we're at the top of the hour, try to fit in another question that we have coming in. It's a good one to have here. Couple of good things. We'll talk about this one. This is from Anonymous, who asks, what exactly do you recommend us buying as a whole or bundle that includes everything we need for both courses 1 and 2, objectives, notes, vouchers, etc.? I try not to bundle vouchers with anything, but if you go to my site, I have a success bundle. This includes my course notes, my practice exams, my exam hacks ebook, a series of downloadable versions of my videos, downloadable version in audio form. So there's a lot of things. We just take everything and we put it into the success bundle, or you can buy those separately. And when you start to buy a core 1, you also have the option to add on core 2 at a discount. So if you get them both at the same time, sometimes a significant discount. If you're buying success bundles for 1, you'll see a greatly reduced price to add on the other core as its success bundle. What I don't do, and what's in this question, is vouchers. Include everything, including vouchers. And I've seen bundles that do this. They bundle in the books with the videos, with the practice exams, with the labs, and the voucher, and everything, all one price, and you're done. But as I mentioned earlier, it takes months for someone just starting in the industry to learn everything they need to take one of these exams. And when you buy a voucher, the voucher is usually good for a year from the date of purchase. So why would you buy your voucher when you start your studies, knowing that you couldn't possibly use the voucher for another couple, 2-3 months, or even longer? Because sometimes life happens and you had an idea that you're going to take this exam in 3 months. Well, it turns out you're going to take the exam in 6 months, maybe 9 months. Maybe you take the exam in a year. This does happen. I just got an email this week from someone who said, I purchased my voucher a year ago. I'm just ready to take it, but I'd like another week or 2. Can you move the date? I can't, because they're not my vouchers. CompTIA said, we don't change the expiration dates. So on their terms and conditions of the voucher, it is stated there that that's a locked-in date. So because of that, I tell people, don't buy the voucher until you're really ready to take the exam. Then you can buy the voucher, and then you've got a full year. You don't have to worry so much about those dates if you run into a challenge. That might help you a little bit. To the point, chat room's already mentioned this, to that point, some people like to get the voucher so they can lock in a date and they can study to that date. It's kind of motivating, kind of forces you to study. Well, I have to study because I've already set my date. I'm only taking this exam in 2 weeks, so I have to study because I've got it locked in. Now, the reality of that, of course, I think many of us realize, is this is an in-person exam, you can reschedule that date 24 hours or more before the exam. So if you've got 2 weeks until I take this exam and a week goes by and you think, I'm never going to be ready for this exam in another week, let's push it out another week. You can go online, change the date, get the date another week out, another month out. As long as you don't exceed the expiration date of the voucher, you can push that out to be whenever you would like. If you were taking your exam online, all you have to do is reschedule before your exam time. They give you a little bit more leeway there. I don't really recommend waiting until your exam time to rebook your exam, but you could. They do allow that. Here's my tip for you, though. If you reschedule your exam online, log off, log back on to the CompTIA website, and check the date again. It's surprising how many times, and I'm not sure what is causing this, it's surprising how many times someone reschedules their exam And they found out later it never took. It never really changed it. And I don't know if it's a UI issue on the CompTIA side or the Pearson VUE side. I don't know if it's a problem with something relating to their systems. I don't know. But I'm telling you that if you reschedule, double check the rescheduling. Because if you miss your exam, let's say you set a date and you set a time to be in person, or you set a date and you set a time to take the exam online, and you miss the exam time, you don't show up, your voucher is gone. Your exam sitting is gone. All the money you invested in taking the exam is gone. That's it. They don't give you any retries. You don't get a do-over. Even if you bought a voucher that has the retake assurance, for those of you that have worked with the vouchers, there's some vouchers, it's a one-time voucher. You take the exam, you pass or fail, that's it, your voucher's done. But you can also pay $49 more and get a voucher with the retake assurance, which means if you fail your first exam, you can take it again. That for no additional cost. Really, it was for $49, sort of like insurance. You get a little bit of insurance for $49, which allows you a do-over. That's effectively what that voucher is. The problem, though, is that if you miss the exam time, you didn't fail, you are a no-show. And a no-show cancels the voucher and the retake. So you don't want to miss your exam time. That could be bad. That's a big investment. That's hundreds of dollars that just disappears because you didn't make an appointment. That is not the position you want to be in. So be very particular. Put a particular level of importance on the date and the time of your exam. Double check it, confirm it, make sure it's correct. You don't want to miss that. You can always rebook it, but you don't want to miss it. So important. That's my recommendation for those. And that's why I don't bundle vouchers with mine. At least I've been thinking of maybe doing it because some people like to do it quickly. 3 months, they're in, they're out. Maybe there is a need to have a bundle that kind of discounts those things a little bit, but it's not something we've done in the past. Maybe we'll consider that for the future if there's a value there. Other questions? There was one more. Okay, we'll see if we can get through this. So this is from Jonathan, who asks, what if you're a beginner? You've never had any experience repairing laptops, replacing batteries. Do I need to set up a lab to get better at this? Or is just knowing the concept of repair enough to pass? This is a sort of a question of minimums and maximums. So at a minimum, we give you information in our video course where you can see people changing the hard drive. You can see people taking off the back of the laptop. You can see what's inside of the laptop. And a lot of the laptops are very similar with each other. And there's a lot of great videos and channels on YouTube of people repairing laptops. Watching one of those, or 2 or 3 or 4 of them, are not only interesting, but you kind of get a feel for the process, even though you're not doing it yourself. But there is something to be said for that tactile doing it, using the screwdriver, taking the back off the system, looking and touching the components. I think there's value to that. I think there's something that in your brain puts those links together, the synapses fire, and suddenly the visceral laptop in front of you has somehow embedded itself in your brain in a way that is different than simply watching videos. So if you have the opportunity to take someone's old dead laptop, take it apart, look what's inside, do some research on the different components inside, that can be pretty useful. But I think for the purposes of the exam, watching other folks do this in a video form may be all you really need. You will not be asked on the exam to get out a screwdriver and to physically replace components. You might be asked a performance-based question or a multiple choice question on that process, but they would not ask you to actually perform that as part of the exam, at least not yet. That'd be kind of fun exam though, wouldn't it? You walk in, here's a computer, it's not working. If you can fix it, you're certified. That'd be kind of fun. Maybe there's some hardware broken. Maybe there's a network piece not right. Maybe the operating system is broken. And that would be a great way to do that. And there are some great competitions and great study materials out there. There are some great labs. We offer the CompTIA CertMaster labs on our site. Those labs do a great way of simulating those types of things. They are in real time, can take you through the process of grabbing a virtual screwdriver and virtually removing those from that piece. And those are, for the folks in the chat room that mentioned test out, those are the old test out simulations that CompTIA has put into their CertMaster application. The CertMaster labs specifically, and that's on our website at a discount as well. All the CompTIA stuff is discounted on our website, so you can find those and pay a lot less than buying it on the CompTIA site. So CompTIA bought Test Out a couple of years ago, and so that's why the Test Out simulations, where you're working in a sort of a 3D mode and virtually removing and adding cables and cards into a computer, you can do all of that with the CertMaster labs. We should try that sometime after study group and step through it. I've got the license on my machine. We can kind of step through one of those labs to see what it's like. I should do a video of one because they're kind of fun to play around with, and something you might want to use just to get a little bit more familiar, so that you really are familiar with the technology. You did it yourself. You stepped through the process of running the cables and plugging in the systems and troubleshooting the motherboard, all by looking and working in that virtual environment. It's kind of fun too, to be able to work with it. Well, I think that brings us, I'm a little bit over time, a little bit past the top of the hour. So that brings us to the end of what I think would be a good place to stop with today's study group. But hopefully you were able to get through some good content today. We went through all of these questions relating to Core 1. Our plan, of course, is to come back on Thursday. We're here on a Monday currently. Come back on Thursday. We're doing our Core 2 study group. The Core 2 study group, of course, is going to cover operating systems, security, and of course, the troubleshooting of all of those. We've got a lot of interesting things going on there. And if you've got questions about the A+ exams, about IT in general, about the environments we're dealing with in this world of trying to get a job in IT, we can always talk about those things as well. We love to get your questions. It's always a fun time. We hope you're able to join us there. If you ever want to know when the next live event is going to be, simply go to professormesser.com/calendar. Thank you so much for joining us for today's live stream. It was great to see you. Hope to see you again sometime soon. We'll catch you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.